Okay, everybody. Boker Tov, good morning. This is actually our last session for a month because I'm going back to the Holy Land. So I want to just finish up the little section that we started yesterday, but I think it was left in sort of a state of confusion. So I'd like to do it better. As a matter of fact, I deleted the video. I thought it was so. Besides the fact I couldn't even type the proper name of it. But okay. So Rav Kook is making a distinction between tshuva pnimit and tshuva chitzonit. So internal tshuva and external tshuva. What's the difference between internal tshuva and external tshuva? So internal tshuva has to do with what's under the hood. As I think we may have used that expression yesterday, and that is the will, the desire. That a person does tshuva, that they desire the good. It's not like external tshuva. External tshuva is that you still want to do really terrible things, but you simply force yourself not to. Okay, so you want to bite your fingernails. We'll use a very benign example, but you force yourself not to by sheer brute force. Okay, but an internal tshuva is that you actually desire the good, right? So now, obviously, on the one hand, it's not so easy to to change one's inner desire. That's not an easy thing to do. Okay. On the other hand, it's not as if it's so easy to curb our external behavior either. Both of those are very tall challenges. But obviously, if one has changed one's internal desire, the external behavior flows, hopefully, in a much more harmonious way with the internal desire. I mean, if you don't have any desire to bite your fingernails, not biting your fingernails is fairly easy, right? But when you desire to do something bad and you simply have to beat your will into submission, so that's a tough challenge. So that's the theme that Rav Kook here is dealing with. And Rav Kook said something really very, very harsh. It's very interesting to contrast this, by the way, because we all learned Tanya here, the great fundamental sefer, great Torah, holy book that's written by the founder of Chabad Hasidut, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Ladi, where he very much focuses on the external tshuva and actually makes sort of a virtue out of it, whereas Rav Kook is actually in a certain sense, it sounds like he's denigrating external tshuva. But I just want to address that just for a second. So if you remember that in Tanya, it said that don't be so upset when you feel a desire for bad things. Okay. So Rav Kook is saying that the highest form of tshuva, the tshuva which is mishubachat, which is praiseworthy, the 5-star tshuva is when the will, the ratzon, is for the good. And the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, had said that really should not be a kind of immediate goal. It's too elusive. It's too difficult. It's in the hands of Hashem, really. Hashem makes us with a will. We mentioned this idea before that some people have a will that's like a goring ox, and some people will is like a sheep, right? So that's kind of Kadosh Baruch Hu, kind of, to a certain extent. It's like a gift. Okay, like I don't desire. I don't. You sometimes you meet people like this. You wonder, like, were they given a Yetzer Hara? Like you don't sense the tension in them of a battle. Some people you meet, you see that you almost feel it in the air that they're a person who's terribly conflicted. You sort of read the stress on their face. When patients come to Dr. Koff, it's probably like, just all the body language and, that this person is living conflict in such a palpable way. And then some people just they're good people that you meet and you just say, wow, like they're just good, gentle people. Right? Like, they just don't have a mean bone in their body. There's not, that's a gift. That's a gift. So that's why the Baal HaTanya says that, if we have set as our goal something which is essentially a gift from Hashem, we're setting ourselves up for a very bad case of beating ourselves up and lack of self-esteem, because we're always going to beat ourselves for the fact that we desire things that aren't good. He says it's a healthier approach to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me, I'm a goring ox inside. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me that. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me the task to be able to control it, to not express it outwardly, right? That though I have a goring ox inside of me, but to squash it down, right? Not let it express itself. And if you remember, the Baal HaTanya actually quoted from the Zohar that said that the greatest nachas, the greatest delight, pleasure that Kodesh Baruch Hu gets from us is precisely this: when we are able to suppress negative impulses. That's a tremendous source of delight for Kodesh Baruch Hu, right? And we actually should, instead of getting upset that we are drawn towards evil, we should actually be so happy that we were able to control it. And instead of getting depressed about it, like, look, I'm looking in the mirror. I'm goring. I can't believe I wanted that. I can't believe I wanted that. I can't believe I wanted to eat this or do that or talk this or whatever it may be, right? To say, of course I wanted to do that. I have a Yetzer Hora that Kodesh Baruch Hu gave me as part of the way Hashem made the world. And my Yetzer Hora happens to be extremely strong. It's a goring ox. I'm not talking about myself here, by the way. We always say I mean,
you're talking about mine.
I'm talking about Zev over here. I'm not talking about whatever. Zev and I. Dr. Khan is a different story. He's an angel. So so that's the approach of to be happy that you were able to do the mitzvah of sur meirah, to depart from evil. Okay. So, but the Rav Kook seems to take a different approach. Rav Kook seems to say that that we really should strive to be able to kind of treat that impulse within us, that ratzon that can actually be impacted. We can, by learning Torah and through prayer, through study, through effort, we can actually sweeten our will. We can have the will become more gentle and refined and cultivate. We can take the goring ox and make it into a little sheep. Okay, the pnimiyut, right? The tshuva pnimit, very good, very good. And now, Rav Kook explained that, well, what's the problem with just suppressing our behavior, but having a strong will towards negative things? Like, right, the Baal HaTanya said that was a good thing. You should be so happy about it. You suppressed your behavior. So Rav Kook explains that kind of tshuva chitzonit, external tshuva, is like taking bitter medicine. Okay, so, and the thought that occurred to me, there's a lot of medicine out there, especially the medicines that deals with depression, things like that. People feel kind of sedated. They're tired, and kind of the life force is sapped from them by the medication. So on the one hand, the medication has helped them from acting out, and it's helped them to walk the straight and narrow better. Okay, or that's just an example, but it could, the psychological medicine, but antidepressants, etc. But maybe a better example is just regular medicine that deals with a physical malady. So often there's side effects, and those side effects have an impact of kind of weakening our sense of vitality. And so Rav Kook has this idea. We once talked about this last year, I believe, that ratzon, will, is kind of like the engine that drives us. And it certainly is. Why do we do things? Because you've got that ratzon, right? That gives you initiative, is ratzon, will. Right? You get up in the morning. Well, I'm really looking forward to today because I want to do X, Y, Z. right? Gets you out of bed, will. So the problem is that if you take a medicine that it hampers the will, then you become the engine which is driving you, which is will, has become diminished. You know, like I think I once gave the example of a car, right? You don't want to fix the car and somehow damage the engine, right? Because you know, the engine drives the car. So the same thing, the engine which drives us is will. And therefore, a better form of treatment is something which, on the contrary, makes the will even more vital, even more energetic. So when tshuva is a yoke, that's the word, if you remember, Rav Kook used yesterday. When it's a yoke, meaning it's external tshuva, right? You just, oh man, you know, you just, sometimes you see, I'm going to say something not so nice. You sometimes see, when people think of Orthodox Jews, they don't always think of like a really happy, vibrant, energetic person. Now, these are stereotypes, but I'm just in the public imagination. Sometimes I think of someone kind of like bent over with the burdens of life and kind of like exercising a lot of, suppression, right? And so Rav Kook says that image is it's a destructive image, and it's destructive for that person who lives a life like that, that somehow the yoke of Torah, in the sense of something which diminishes the energy, the vitality of life. So Rav Kook said yesterday that, sometimes you need the medicine. Sometimes there's no choice. It's just sometimes you need the medicine. And that medicine may be a medicine which diminishes vitality. And what can you do? That's just simply the circumstances. So Rav Kook then said, when it comes to an individual, so even though there's that bitter medicine can impact our vitality, but mashechaser ha'echat yashlim hasheni. Sometimes because we interact with other people, let's say I'm doing that type of tshuva where I'm just forcing myself and it's diminishing my vitality, but other people, their vitality, get together, all 500 of us around the table here. So the vitality shown by other people is going to boost my vitality. So that which is lacking in me, because I happen to be in a regimen right now. This is not true. Maybe it is. I'm not going to tell you. Dealing with certain issues, so it's sapping my vitality because I'm doing external tshuva. But it's okay because Zev and Larry and Moriah and Janice and Mimi and Chana, etc. Their extra vitality will kind of rub off on me, and okay, everything will be okay because kind of through human interaction and the mix of everybody. So it will kind of help me compensate for the fact that I had to kind of suppress certain behavior. So says Rav Kook. So he says that's true when it comes to an individual. But that doesn't work in guiding the behavior of the public as a whole. You see, Rav Kook, and it's very unique about Rav Kook, you'll see a lot of Musar books that'll talk about guiding the behavior of an individual, me standing before Hashem, me, my relationships with other people. Rav Kook does that, of course, a lot, but he also talks about looking at the Jewish people as a collective whole, as a community. All the things that deal with an individual exist within the community as a whole. Just like an individual has a body and a soul, the community has a body and a soul. There's like a collective soul. So when it comes to the tzibur, the collective, so then the way we should, as a community, guide ourselves has to be very, very much to try to stay away from the bitter medicine approach, the tshuva chisonit. Why? Because when it comes to an individual and they take the bitter medicine just to coerce themselves without cultivating the inner will, and it diminishes that vitality, that energy. That's okay. It sometimes has to be done. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, your vitality will compensate for my lack of vitality. I'll be energized by your energy. But what happens if the entire community, some great rabbi comes along and he says, okay, Jewish community of Sacramento, we must do tshuva. Now, I know you don't really want to do these things, but we're going to force ourselves to do these things, and we're going to enforce it with the kosher cops. So the problem is, so that's called tshuva chitzonit. That's an external tshuva, kind of coercive, and but without the internal will. So the problem is that that's going to diminish the vitality of the community. But if that were the case of an individual, as we mentioned before, the lack of vitality of the individual can be compensated for by the extra vitality of other people surrounding him. What happens if the entire community is engaged in external tshuva, this kind of coercive suppression of our vitality? Where's the force which is going to compensate with extra vitality to compensate for the lack of vitality of the entire community? Since the entire community is characterized by this kind of suppression of life's vitality, then you're just left with this sapped vitality. Did everybody see the distinction between individual? So it reminds me, and maybe this is unfair, but whatever, I'll say it anyway. And that is, you look at countries which try to enforce on a community level standards of morality, especially, you forgive me, Islamic countries, Saudi Arabia, or other countries like that, Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. So there is, I've heard, and it makes sense, the kind of a general sapping of vitality, and a kind of a fear factor, a sense of being caged, and a certain amount of resentment and lack of vitality, which actually suppresses the whole creative juices of that society as a whole, because the society has decided, in terms of their own value system, they're going to do external tshuva through coercive means. They're going to curb the behavior of an entire nation, right, through coercive means, independent of the individual personal will. And so what does, it saps the vitality, the creative vitality of the entire nation, and it can't be compensated for as it could have been if it was just an individual making a personal decision, right? So therefore, Rav Kook says, when it comes to communal policy as opposed to our individual behavior, we have to be very, very careful to stay away from sort of communal coercion and public policy, which imposes certain norms of behavior, because if it's not met with an equal cultivation of the inner desire, then it saps us of that vitality, and in the end won't be effective.
Okay, but if Israel was a Torah state, wouldn't there be this coercion?
So it's a very good question, and I think the answer is, to put it in sort of our period right now, Israel, just practically speaking, Israel is not going to become a Torah state until Mashiach comes. That's pretty obvious. When Mashiach comes, we're going to have the will, right? We're going to have that internal will. That's why, that's the interpretation, by the way. There's certain times that the sages say mitzvot are going to be nullified when Mashiach comes. What does that mean? It doesn't mean we don't do the mitzvahs. It means it won't have to be a command. We're going to love Hashem and his Torah so much that we'll do it just because we love to do it, not as simply conforming to some kind of external dictate. And with that, we will end and continue in a month, Be'ezrat Hashem.